Let's check out this assignment. So I am going to SSH into the server for the class, and it may be an IP address like that, or it might have a domain name. Depends on what time in the future you're looking at this. So Zoomy is going to log in there, right? Username is your username. I'm on my alter ego. Hope we get our passphrases right. Please have a good passphrase and don't make it the same as your login to the system that you're working on. That's bad security. Oh, good, I got it right today. So we're in. Where are we? We're in our home directory. What do we have in there? We have some text files and some configuration files, a .local, .ssh directories. Okay, cool. Let's make our CS140 directory. And then we'll run script and record what we do. Now, I don't need the -a since I'm doing it the first time, but it's nice to have. Use tab complete when necessary. Here I got to type this out because it's a new file name. All right, script is going. Let's see. So in script, I want to double check where I'm at. Double check what files I have. Okay, do a regular ls. Nice, and do an ls on up arrow. Tab complete. Okay, so there's the file that script is writing into. If you're ever unsure if you're running script, remember you can do a ps-a and it will show you what's currently running in this particular terminal. Lowercase is different than capital. PS capital A shows you pretty much everything that's running on the system. A lot more stuff, okay? Good to know. All right, next I want to, let's see, what do we got here? Let's blow this up a little bit. Check out the bash.bashrc file. Okay, check out. That just means view. Good to read the rest of the instructions. Notice that there are some aliased commands for versions of ls commented out with a # near the end, or maybe you call it a hashtag. Use a text editor like Nano. You can use Vim if you want, or maybe you're an Emacs fan, to uncomment the lines for LL and LA by deleting the # at the beginning of each line, then run the command source.bashrc. So that reruns the commands in .bashrc, which would be the new ones, and then we should be able to run those. All right, let's see what's going on. So if I try LL right now, not found, LA, not found. Okay, so let's look at, so we could either cat or we could do less. I'm going to do less, so I don't need to record the contents of the file in script. .bashrc, and I'd like to page through it. So you can page through it by using the down arrow, or if you hit the space bar, that will go one whole screen at a time. Additionally, if you hit a slash, that's search forward in most editors. And so I could search forward for ls. Oh, finds at the end of shells up there. Should go down a little bit and then /ls again. And oh, it's part of else. All right, enable color support. Okay, there's an alias right there. Alias ls equals ls -- color auto. Okay, so I'm getting colors when I do ls because that's there. If that wasn't there, we wouldn't get colors. Oh, here we go. Some more aliases. Alias LL, LA. This is probably what I want right here. And again, the ls is highlighted here because I did a search. So if I quit last, oops, and then go back in there and I just scroll down to the bottom and look up just a little bit, this is the section that I'm looking for. Okay, so it said to get rid of the pound sign. So arrow back over to that. And you can't do anything. Why not? Because you're in a paging reader. So you can use the arrow keys to move around up and down, and you can use the space bar to jump, and you can slash to search forward. I think question mark searches backwards, or you can Q to quit. If you want to learn more about less, you could do man less, or check out some tutorial online. Quit the manual page. All right, so we want to edit that. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to use Nano. I find Nano easier than Vim, but some of you may have fallen in love with Vim. Congratulations. Good job. All right, and then we want to arrow down to the bottom. Here, if you hit space, it'll make a literal space. Oops, don't want that, do I? Sometimes spaces matter, sometimes they don't. Depends on the context. Here, they wouldn't matter. You'll learn more about the context of different keys as you move through this stuff. It takes time. All right. Oh, there we go. All right, so I want to get rid of that pound and that pound sign, and then, so that means I'm going to alias typing LL, which means ls-l. And earlier I tried LL and LA, and it said command not found. All right, so Control S to save, Control X to quit. And then, right, LL still isn't going to work. Why? Because we need to next tell the operating system to rerun the commands in your bash resource file so it knows whatever new commands there are. So we're going to source .bashrc. Now if I do LL, cool, I get the same thing as if I typed ls-l. And if I type LA, then I get the same thing that I would get as if I typed ls-a. Sweet. And we did this the other day in our shell to alias the login here so that I aliased SSHDCT to mean all of that. So when I type SSHDCT, it SSHs me into my username at this particular computer's IP address. Right? So again, you can make custom commands, things that you do often that are repetitive and don't change, then you can make a shortcut, an alias. Okay, so ls and la work. Next, create a new file called favorites. Okay, then move it to the CS140 directory. Okay, let's see if that is a thing. Where am I now? PWD. Okay, I'm in my home directory, and I want to create a file called favorites. So that would be touch. Oops. And then I want to, it's ls. Now we can see favorites is in there. So next I want to move that into the CS140 directory. So to do that, I say move. What do I want to move? Favorites. Where do I want to move it? I want to move it to CS140. Boom, done. Okay, then we want to rename the file from favorites.txt to myfavorites.txt. Okay, that's another move. So let's go back there, and then I'm going to change into that directory. So cd cs140, that way there's less to type. And then ls, see what's in there, cool. And we want to move favorites, and we want to move it into my favorites. A little dash in between, and have the same extension. Sometimes, like when I don't want to retype that, I'll do something like this. I'll do FA to get favorites typed, hit tab to complete it, and then I'll arrow to the beginning and type some whatever, like old, or in this case, it's going to be my. Sometimes I put little prefixes instead of the suffix, like file type. I don't need to arrow to the end. I can just hit enter, and it'll run that command. And now if I do an ls, I should see that I have my favorites instead of favorites. Notice the difference between this line here and this line here. Cool. Done. create a new directory called special in your CS140 directory. Okay, two ways I could do that, at least. So I'm in the CS140 directory, so I could just do mkdir and then whatever I want to call it, special, blah, blah, blah. If you happen to be in your home directory, so I'm going to cd, which will take me to my home directory. Notice that pwd, pwd, I'm not in my CS140 directory anymore. I'm in my home directory. Right. So if I wanted to make that subdirectory here, I would do mkdir, and then I would say make it in CS140, and then put special there. Okay, so if I'm in the CS140 directory, I could have just done mkdir special. Since I'm not in the CS140 directory, I need to be specific about where it goes. Okay, so usually what you do with a command happens in the directory you're in, unless you reference another directory somehow. Very important thing to know. All right, so ls, there is no directory called special here. ls on CS140, and there's the special directory. Okay, moving along. All right, we did that. Okay, we want to move my favorites in there, and then we want to add stuff to my favorites. Let's do it. All right, so we are going to cd into CS140, and then in there, I'm going to move my favorites to special. So what am I moving? Where am I moving it to? What am I moving? Where am I moving it to? Right before, when I did move, I said I'm moving favorites to a new file called my-favorites. Right? So move takes some getting used to on how to use it. All right, oops. And then if I ls here, I should see that my favorites is not there. And if I do a list on special, I should see it is now there. Okay. To edit it, I can edit it right from here. I could do nano, and then I would have to say go look in special for the file called my favorites, and then nano will open it, and I can tell some of my favorite commands. So ls is a great command. Move is a fantastic command. CP for copy is another good one. PWD, where the hell am I? That's a good one. One we'll learn soon that's pretty cool is who. And I might as well add who am I in case we're logging in as other users and we want to double check who the hell am I. If you can either control S to save and then control X to exit, or you can control X and it'll say, hey, don't you want to save this? Y for yes. Put it in special my favorites, absolutely. Bada boom, bada bing, bada bam, we're done with that part. Moving on to the next part. Next, let's see, we did this here, edit, and next we want to list the files in your directory, okay, and move any files to your new special directory. Okay, so what does it mean to be in my directory? Well, my directory is my home directory. Everything else I own lives there. Oops, not that, I want this. All right, so let's see, pwd, where am I? Oh, I'm not in my home directory. So let's cd to my home directory, which can either be done with just cd, or if I did cd tilde or cd tilde slash, it would do the same thing. Okay, what files are here? All right, I have all those text files. Those came with my account. Move any text files to your new special directory. Right, okay, let's do that. So let's see, I could move them one at a time. Like I could MV for move and grab grades, and then I could put it in CS140 special. That's one way to do it, and I do that each time for each file. Better way is I could do grades and cake and random and so on, and then I could move those to CS special. And again, imagine all of them listed. That would work too. You can move more than one file at a time, at least to another directory. Renaming is a whole nother thing. Okay, or star is a wildcard, meaning move anything .txt. So that would be anything that ends in .txt. So since the star is at the beginning, if I did something like move t star, that would move anything that starts with T. So that would move toc.txt, that would move text summary.txt, those would end up moving. All right, so I want star. We'll learn more about wildcard characters and regular expressions later. .txt, and they want to go into CS140 special. Boom. Okay, so ls, see what's here? Hey, they're not there. ls CS140, command line review and special, and then ls CS140 special, and there's all the text files. Nice. Okay, moving on, moving on. All right, next we want a cat password, grep, bash password. Okay, we want to run each of those commands. Let's see what happens with those. And I can almost see them. It's going to slide over a little bit. And all this is being recorded, right? Yes, script is still running. Cool. Where am I? Who am I? Excellent. Okay. So I want to cat slash means go all the way to the beginning of this drive that I'm in right now. And in the beginning of that drive, there should be a folder called etc, which is configuration stuff. And then PASS tab. Oh, there's a PASSWD. There's also a PASSWD with a little dash. That's probably some previously saved version of it or a backup. All right, so cat that, and then we want to pipe send to grep. Grep is a general regular expression parser. And we want to grep for the word bash. So that means show me any line in the file I started with here that has bash in it somewhere, anywhere. Okay, there's all those lines. All right. Other option is to grep for bash in the file /etc PASSWD. And that does the same exact thing. The output you should see is identical for those there. And then let's do head. What does head do? TC, PASS. Starts with root, daemon, bin, blah, 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 but I don't see any of that other stuff. That's interesting. What if we do an LESS? I don't have that yet. Oh, that's later. Okay, we'll do it now anyway, just for fun, because remember LESS, less is a way to read files. Oh, that's the beginning of the file. The file starts with root, then daemon, then bin. Okay, this is saying there's more. And once I get to the end, it'll say end, Q to quit. All right, so let's see, where was I? So it looks like head shows the first few lines. How many? Looks like about 10. And you might remember way back in chapter 3, there was a way to tell head to only show you 2 lines or 5 lines at the beginning. That's one. Tail. Well, if head is the beginning, maybe tail's the end. /etc password. Okay, so that looks like the end there. And if I do a cat on it, cat will just fly through it. And if my screen isn't tall enough to view that, I'm out of luck, unless there's a scroll bar. Zoom. Okay, tail shows the end. All right, so let's see, what else? Then it says do less on etc password, then type /zoomy. Okay, let's try that. So let's say I typed less earlier, otherwise you could just type less, blah, 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 enter /, and then I want to type zoomy, and that zips me down and highlights a line that has zoomy in 2 different spots. Cool. Okay. So again, you can search forward in a file. I think searching backwards is question mark, and then we could go question mark root, and that should zip backwards in the file looking for something. And we learned a little bit about that when we were playing with the Vim tutor. Hopefully you finished your Vim tutor. All right, Q to quit, a reader, and then, oh, look at that, it says type Q to leave. All right, next we want to try the diff command that was covered in chapters 3 and 4. you will first need to change to the directory that you moved your text files into. Okay, so it says here, I probably moved my text files to my home directory, CS140 special. Check it out. So let's see, ls, no text files, change directory or move to. CD would be change directory, CS, special, ls. Okay, those are my text files. So then I can do a diff there. -q means quick. Either say there's a difference or don't say anything. Numbers, tab complete work, that's a good sign. RIN, tab complete work, so it looks like I'm good. The files numbers and random differ. Okay, so then we'll do a more specific command. So I'm going to hit up arrow, then I'm going to back up here and replace the -q with a -YW 35. And what that means was covered, I believe, in chapter 3. Okay, so that's basically showing the two files side by side, and it's putting a bar in between when they differ. So line 1, they're the same. Line 2 differs. Line 3 differs. Line 4 is the same. Line 5 differs as follows. And the more complicated the differences are, obviously you'll see a lot more stuff. Takes some getting used to. All right, if I run the diff command with nothing, that gives me a slightly different readout. Okay, so this says line 2 is different than line, let's see, 2 and 3 are different for both files. Okay, that makes sense compared to the previous output. And then line 5 is different. So here they're showing me, again, 2, 3 is a change in the first file from 2, 3 in the second file. And these arrows mean that I could take the information from the first file and put it into the second file to clean that mess up if I wanted them to be similar. And then next it says go the other way. You could take the information from the second file on lines 2 and 3 and stick it into the first to correct it. So they're showing me two different ways to correct these two sets of differences. And then line 5, the differences are a star versus a blah, blah, blah. 0, 0, 0, blah, blah, blah. All right. Okay. Next, we're going to look at diff with redirection and an ed script. Ed stands for editor. It's a stream editor, which is different than a line editor, which like Nano is a line editor, not a stream editor. Diff with redirection, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so PR is print. So we'll try that command next, and then we're going to move one file to another and so on. PR. And random. Okay, looks good. And apparently order of operations. The L is for the line length or page length. And that's what the 15 goes with, so that had to be the last argument there. Okay, next we are going to copy numbers into N, and this is so we have a backup in case we mess this up. And then if we do the diff command that we did before, but this time instead of on numbers, I'm going to use the copy N. The E means make an ed script. So we want to see what are the differences between ed and random. We want to put that into a script to help fix one of the files. And we're going to put that code in a file called switch, which doesn't exist. So we have to create it. And sh stands for shell script, which is kind of arbitrary but useful. And then we're going to add to that file a line at the end called W for write. And then guess what the Q stands for? Exactly, quit. All right, so if we look at that file, we should see it's going to be similar to what we have up here, but designed for an ED script, and it's going to end with a WQ. Bada boom, bada bang. Okay, we got that one. So we're going to, again, double check that N and random are different. So that's the diff dash Q is a quick check, which says either they're different or they're not. And they're currently different. And then we're going to use ed on n.text, and we're going to read in the shell script that tells ed what to change in n. So n is going to take the changes recommended here to turn n into random by changing only the lines that are different. All right, boom, and it said it made those changes. And then if we now diff those files, so I can just grab the same up arrow twice for that command, I should find they're not different. So just double check. If I go up to this print command, remember this one up here? That shows the two files side by side. Let's run that again to just double check. And this was covered in, I think, chapter 4. Oops, wrong one. Want the print command. There we go. And something, oh, I'm comparing the wrong two files. I want to compare not numbers, but n, right? N is the copy that we transmogrified. Cool. So now n, instead of looking like numbers, which is this left column here, now looks exactly like the other file. Sweet. Worked. All right, then I'm asked to compare the diff output of diff versus diff E. Okay, so diff was back here versus diff E. All right, let's go look. So to do that, I just have to scroll back through here. So diff E was run here, and then I added to that the W and the Q. So basically this is the diff E, and the diff without the E is this up here. So let's see, I'm gonna have to zoom out to be able to see that. So again, this code here, 5C0000010 2-3C, flatlandish Schrodinger's cat. So here's the 5C, and here's the 00 blah, blah, blah. And then the 2-3C, basically line 5 needs to change, and lines 2 and 3 need to change. And this is what they need to change to, which is what this was telling me before. That line 2-3 is different in my file than 2-3 of the other file. And the difference is these two things. So if I take this second stuff and replace that stuff, then numbers will look like random. But remember, we moved numbers into n, and then we operated on that copy called n. All right, so what's the difference between them? And how are they similar? They both show what numbers, or n, doesn't have that random does. That's what they both show. The difference is that the first diff command shows what the numbers file has that random doesn't. The lines that I wanted to replace in that direction. And this is directional, right? Because I moved stuff from random and overwrote stuff in numbers, or the new version of numbers called just n. All right, think about that. Another note down here, echo your answer. Let's see, I haven't done an echo answer yet, have I? Let's see, I missed that one right there. So again, if you haven't done that yet, the echo command will just record into the standard output, which script records. So compare the differences. All right, so I would say something like, and yours shouldn't be like mine because it's your opinion, but I'm going to echo my opinion into a pair of quotes. I want to write in between them. So diff shows both files differences. And again, this is also explained in chapter 4, so you might want to go back and review chapter 4 toward the end. While diff dash E only shows what must be changed for the first file to match the second. And echo just records that on the screen, so now I have that recorded. So if I look at my script file later, I'll see that echo in and out. All right, so back here, there was a spot where you were supposed to, and I said this out loud, how each of the commands, cat, grep, blah, 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 head versus tail, were similar but different. So hopefully you echo that in there. And then note we could change an ed script like this to make some of the changes, but not all. So we could go back and let's find that. If we only wanted to make some of the changes, we would just edit this here. So like suppose we didn't want line 5 to change, we would just delete this whole section here. And the dot just means continue and do something else. Or if we wanted a slightly different change, like maybe we wanted this to happen, but we didn't want the space to be between flat and land, we could just go delete the space and run the script, and then there wouldn't be a space in there. So, and again, we'd typically be running this on files that have more complicated differences. We're trying to get one to match the other without overwriting everything. Next. All right, another example of redirection. We're going to look at grep versus T. Cool. And let's slide this over so we can see more. Grep. And we're going to look at bin bash. And we're going to etc password. All right, so what is this doing right here? Grep looks for some information, if you just run grep on its own, in some other place. So what this should do is any line that contains bin bash, and the $ means at the end of the line, it should list it out. So I'm just going to first run this on its own. I get that. Now, if I add to it the arrow, what is this bash users file? Anybody know? So the arrow means instead of printing this on the screen in front of me, standard output, take any output and put it in a file called bash users.txt. So what should happen now is I should see nothing. What happened? Well, earlier there was not a file called bin bash. So if I do an ls-l, let's do an lt, t sorts by time, it should say a file was just created right? After we created that switch file a little bit ago, and in there, and then there's stuff in that file that we just redirected. So what's going to be in there? Well, what should be in there is the output of, look in the password file and find any line that ends with bin bash, and the $ at the end means ends with. You'll learn more about that later. So if I do an LESS on bash users, there's the output. Okay, so what's the difference? So again, when I ran grep blah, 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 nothing seemed to happen, except I ended up with a new file called that, which matches that. All right, so instead of redirecting into that, like that, I am going to back up. Instead of redirect into or write into, I'm going to pipe, oops, that's not the pipe, there we go, into a program called T. T, what is T? T-E-E, that's like a golf T. And I'm going to put it in bash users 2. Oops, users 2. So I'm going to make a different file, not bash users, but bash users 2 with T. So what T does is it splits what's happening so that I get to see it on the screen. And I should see now there's a file called bash users and bash users 2. And it should have the same thing bash users have. To double check that, I could do a diff on those two. So if I run diff on bash users and bash users 2, oops, type, there we go. I should see there's no difference. If there was a difference, it would have told me so. Okay, explain the differences between the first two commands redirecting output of grep. So what's the difference between doing this and doing this? There is a difference. All right, next we are going to look at sed and awk. Sed is S for stream, ed for editor. And awk we'll get to down here. Awk is a command that parses a file to do certain things with it. Okay, off we go. All right, so we're going to take that echo command, which just says what we told it to say. Forgot my period. And we're going to send it over to sed, and we're going to give sed the expression s / cake / donuts. Let's see what happens. N / close quote. Again, single quotes start and end, and those do not look right. That looks better. They have to match. Interesting. Instead of I love cake and more cake, it says I love donuts and more cake. So what sed did is it searched for cake, and when it found it, it replaced it with donuts, and then it was done. What about the other cake? Well, next line says, do almost the same thing, put a G on the end. What does G mean? Oh, putting the G on the end changed both cakes to donuts. Notice if we run the echo command without anything else, it says I love cake and more cake. If we run it without the G, it replaces only the first cake with donuts. And if we run it with the G, it replaces any cake with donuts. So the G stands for global. So do it throughout the whole file or string. Okay, so next we are going to run sed. Okay, so here I have an issue. Check it out. And I want sed to search for cake. And if it finds cake, replace it with donuts. Where do I want to do that? Instead of the string, I want to do it in a file called cake, but cake. Oh, I'm in the right directory, good. The file exists in this directory. If I tried to run that in my home directory, it wouldn't work. Okay, so here it replaced cake with donuts in each line. And again, if I was in my home directory and I tried to run that, I'm going to get no such file. If I switch to CS special, there is a file called cake. Cake talks about cake. But if I run sed on it, sed says it talks about donuts. Okay, so again, sed is a stream editor. It's just editing the output. It's not editing the file.